we are 1 year later at MCN 2014. We're still alive and we're 1 year further in the process. We have all completed writing our strategic plans and are now in the various stages of implementation. This year's theme, Think Big, Start Small, Create, challenges us to envision the possibilities as we continue to provide universal access to our collections. In today's discussion, we will review the importance of collaboration within the institution, with museum audiences, and across a global public. We will discuss our challenges and successes through examples that helped us make informed decisions in support of our mission and to meet our audience's needs. So we'll begin with each panelist talking for about 10 to 15 minutes each, and then at the end we'll have a good question and answer discussion session. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Bill. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I hope everybody also enjoyed the keynote. The answer to the question why I'm here is because I'm giving this panel discussion. So I had 4 others, but this is my primary reason. We're going to talk today about how the Philadelphia Museum of Art has worked through processes of collaboration, of building capacities, and of communications to help do more for collections information. As Janet said, last year the Philadelphia Museum of Art embarked on a 5-year strategic plan. The plan focused a lot on the use of technology through all aspects of what the museum was doing. It used technology we thought of mostly as a random word generator. Almost every line in the strategic plan said, and technology will be used, and new technologies will be used, and so it became quite a challenge for the technology department. On top of that, shortly after that, we also started a branding initiative, which, as was mentioned this morning, is a lot more than a new graphic identity, but really thinking about how the institution really looks at itself, what the institution is. And one of the key components of that branding initiative was moving from an analog to a digital museum. So the ideas were that digital thinking needed to become the hallmark of everything that was being done. And that required the technology department to really think about what it was doing and how it was doing its work. So my department, the IT department, reorganized. We had been a traditional IT department. We've done large-scale implementations. We did a lot of break-fix. We did a lot of end-user support. But we didn't focus a lot on other kinds of core business technologies, and we didn't focus a lot on interactive technology. So the division grew to have an information management focus, and to also pull together the functions of interactive technology, to consolidate that into one group, as that responsibility had been spread out across the museum and using consultants. We still do all of the traditional IT pieces, but we also do a lot more work with departments on information management, and we work a lot with curatorial departments and education departments on the creation of interactive technology. And one of the challenges in this reorganization was not so much figuring out the work that needed to be done, but thinking about how the information technology staff, or the information and interpretive technology staff, really had to rethink the work that they did. A lot of my staff, myself included, were very functional. We're people that are very sort of problem solving, and to be able to think outside the box, to be able to think about what the institution wanted to do, to be able to also serve as mentors to the rest of the institution about how to use technology and how best to implement technology projects throughout the institution. What we also learned is that monolithic IT departments are essentially a dinosaur. And in order to bring technology and analog and digital thinking to the rest of the institution, we had to actually embrace the entire institution having that responsibility, so that all functions are not isolated in the IT department. All technology decisions are not part of the IT department. And so we developed what we call the roadmap to digital excellence. It's a small thing. And on the left side, it's really about how IT was managed at the museum prior to this reorganization, and where we're thinking of where we would like to move after. And it goes across those four things: strategy, technology, people, and process. So we have a digital strategy and digital thinking that is permeated throughout the institution. It becomes the responsibility of all departments to think digitally first, not just the IT department. We think about our systems in a more integrated way. We don't think about them as islands. We don't think about them as small pieces of things to solve individual problems. But all those decisions are really thought of about how do you manage information and how you manage technology across the broader scope of what the institution wants to do. We push knowledge out. We embrace the idea that not only we're not the only ones with the technology answer. Many of the other units in the museum have technologists on their staff. They make arrangements with outside consultants. They're doing technology projects. Commodity technology has really pushed skill sets out into all different places. And we recognize that we may be driving some projects, but also just in service of others, depending on where they're built. And to understand that our core function is really to make sure that things integrate together, that things, that information is managed properly, that things are sustainable. But it doesn't have to be built by us. It doesn't have to be driven by us. It's a collaborative process. And then we're looking to make sure that decisions and that process, those decisions are really pushed down to staff that are really involved in doing the process. So less top-down and more cross-departmental decision-making. And when you think about communication and collaboration across the institution, you think about the individual units in the institution. And we've had very traditional organization charts which sort of even graphically still puts you in silos. So you have all these departments and everybody reports up and everybody reports over and they connect this way. And we really are beginning, when you think about it from a communication and collaboration standpoint, you really think about it more as a network. All departments are interconnected with each other. All departments have to find ways to work with each other, that there's communication and collaboration paths all throughout the institution, and it isn't just goes up and goes across and goes down. So we're trying very hard to find ways to build those bridges and to break up the internal silos. So that when you're thinking about a project to increase visitation, one of our strategic plans, the membership and visitor services department staff, marketing department staff, interactive and information technology staff come together in a project team to work on that. If you're thinking about interpreting the collections in a different way, different groups come together. And if you're thinking about something really large, like create the more memorable on-site experience, which is one of our strategic plan goals as well, larger groups of departments come together to work on those problems, and they work together at all levels. One of the projects that has started based on this model is what we call the Art Information Task Force, thinking big. The Art Information Task Force has a very large charge, but is co-chaired by both myself and the director of the library, includes curatorial, education, registrars, and conservation library. And it has a lot of very detailed functions. We're supposed to assess the current value of our collections information system. We're supposed to find ways to reinterpret and reimagine the presentation of the collections online. We're supposed to find out and assign staff to be responsible for specific areas of collections management and collections information. And we're supposed to find new ways of presenting the collection both in the physical space and in the online space. So the Art Information Task Force began to meet in June of 2013. And when that group came together, and you can imagine if people have been to cross-departmental meetings before, there was a lot of discussions about, why don't we have this or why don't we have that? Other museums are doing this, other museums are doing that. How come we're not doing this? How come we're not doing that? And as we pulled through those discussions, we came to things that were really small wins. Because we had the people in the room together, we wanted to be able to use images that were copyright under the fair use guidelines of the AMD. All the people that needed to make that decision happened to be on the committee because of the way that the group came together. So we were able to rewrite policies. We were able to do it quickly, and we now have 2,900 fair use thumbnail images online. We wanted to be able to provide image downloads, and again, because of the way that the group was pulled together, that group had the power to do that decision making. We were able to make that decision quickly, figure out the process of how to do it, and now we have 90,000 images available for download. 55,000 of them have been downloaded since April. And so those decisions came quickly. Those decisions were great to sort of teach people how to do the work collaboratively, and be able to see really quick results right away. We've looked at other things for education department to be able to do on-view filters. The group is actively looking at different ways to organize search. And again, it became a much more vibrant discussion as opposed to not looking outside about what people think that they want, but being able to actually be the group to decide what we want and be able to implement those things right away. And we began to have broader discussions on what we've become called the curated experience. And the idea was curators are storytellers. Curators tell stories using physical spaces. Curators tell stories in articles. Curators tell stories in books. They tell these things by putting things together, contrasting and comparing pieces together. But they do them in the physical space, and they do them in a largely linear fashion in most of the distribution that they're used to. In technology, it's essentially a nonlinear fashion, and teaching the curatorial staff how to deal with the nonlinear nature of how people will approach objects online, how people might approach objects in the gallery, moving from gallery to gallery in a less prescribed way. So we did a lot of work with the curatorial staff, showing them visitor behavior, showing them online analytics, teaching them that when people come into an online object, the majority of the people who are seeing our objects have come in through a Google search, landed straight on that object, looked at the thing that they found from their search, and then they leave. So if we want to capture those people, we really need to give them this entry space at that point to say, now you found this thing, and here are other things that you might be able to grow out of that, and capture people where they've come from, and not thinking about just defining more linear paths for people that they may just bypass because they're not actually going to see them. And one of the nice things about the pulling the people together is that we had a curator and a person from our education department, an interpreter from our education department, pulled together this sample, aside from the graphics, which our department felt somewhat limited by, given that we wanted everything to be mobile and responsive. But they built their own little presentation about how this nonlinear feature would work. And it's become, as part of working through this group, it's become one of the things that we're using now as a model as we work through mobile pieces, as we work through things online, and as we work through kiosks in the gallery to understand that there's this nonlinear component for these things, and that these things get built into the design of all the things that we're doing going forward. So, and as far as outcomes go, the group has met twice a month for about a year. We're scaling back now because we've done a lot of the basic work. But one of the things that came out of that is that the entire group, curatorial group, understood that information was one of the core pieces of what had to happen. People were very reluctant over time, and it's a story that's told here a lot, to catalog their work in TMS. They catalog their work in various places. They don't like using the collections management system for whatever reason. But people understood that that was the place where the information came from, and if all of the objects that we have that are going to be published online can be part of these nonlinear curated experiences, all of them had to have a minimum amount of information. And the curatorial staff embraced this idea, and it came to a point where we were able to institute a minimum cataloging standard. So going forward, everything that is accessioned is going to have a minimum set of data automatically created for that object, and the curatorial staff is working with us to help work through the backlog, so that any time that we want to use an object, the object will actually already be ready, information-wise, to fit into these various projects that we wanted to do. We've also assigned one curator and one curatorial assistant from each department for cataloging and interpretive tasks. So there's a curator that's responsible for overseeing the cataloging work in their department to make sure that this work is being done. They're also overseeing the curatorial assistant to sort of spur this work along. And they also serve as liaison to not only the Art Information Task Force, but to the other interpretive projects that we have, to make sure that the ideas of how we want to use interpretive material is carried forward, and also as new information ideas come back, to bring them back to the task force, so that if we need to modify and add to the information standard, we have people that are advocating for it in other areas of the museum. The collaboration has helped in joint fundraising opportunities. We have a variety of department advisory committees. And so what happens now is, if the Deck Arts Advisory Committee is meeting, the interactive projects are presented also to those, not only just things that they may want to accession or deaccession, or publications that are coming up, but the interactive projects are presented in those meeting spaces. The curators present those. And what happens is that we actually get support, fundraising support in that context as well, for creating these projects moving forward. And we've had, as trustees sit across different of these committees, and as they've seen us being able to tell this story over and over again and show that the institution is working together, we've been much more successful in raising money. We have a department advisory committee which has a trustee from the education committee and our Deck Arts committee. And our last advisory committee, we raised about $600,000 across trustees because of this, because they saw that we were actually working across all these different departments and understood that what we were presenting was a collaborative and an integrated approach across the museum, and that resonated with them, and they were more interested in funding the project. And we've also changed the way that we talk about how we do this work in our board meetings. We present to the board about once a year about technology projects. And instead of it just being me talking to the board about all the different projects, we bring in other departments, we bring in people to do social media, we bring in curators, we bring in educators and give a broader view of how technology is being used throughout the institution. And again, we've developed a lot of goodwill from that. So the board has agreed that in the future capital campaigns, to add a process to create an endowment for technology projects and for technology work in the museum, so that there'll be an endowment specifically to support technology staff, infrastructure, and then also to have a pool of money to deal with these interactive projects. So it isn't easy. The Art Information Task Force was a very good example of how departments came together, and after a relatively short period of time were able to come together and collaborate across projects. We have a lot of projects that we're doing this way. Some of them are more successful than others, and it is very difficult. It's very difficult for me to remember the kinds of work that we have to do now, to remember to be more collaborative, to remember to be more embracing of how people would like to use technology, to teach my staff how to listen, and to be able to be the mentor to other departments about technology use. But we have done a lot of work, and I think that we're moving forward in a good direction, and I expect that we'll have even more success as we go forward. Thank you.
Hello, as Janet said, I'm Caroline Harris, Associate Director for Education at the Princeton University Art Museum. I also have a cold, so please forgive my nasal intonation. So I'm here with Janet to talk about our strategic plan and how it's informing our decisions. And I feel like I'm really the think small piece of the presentation, because what I'm going to be talking about is very small tweaks we made to our processes over the last year, thanks to the strategic plan. And I have to say they feel like very small tweaks, especially after Lance Wheeler's talk that we just heard. And honestly, some of them were very simple and obvious, but it took the pressure of the plan to push us to make these changes. So just a little background. This is an image of the Princeton University Art Museum. Like all museums, we work with many audiences across the community. And sometimes it feels like we're trying to be all things to all people. And this is our entrance, and above the entrance you can see George Siegel's acrobats, which seemed to me like a good metaphor for trying to be, sort of move yourself around in a way that you could be all things to all people. And we do the full complement of programs for various audiences. This is one of our successful family days, school groups, etc. But really, our core audience, the reason we exist, is for Princeton students. And we were founded in the 1880s, and we were founded to serve them. And these are two images that give examples of that mission. So on the top left is an anthropology course taught by a professor in the anthropology department, Larry Rosen, on cultural property, and the man in the striped shirt leaning forward is our curator of ancient American art, Brian Just, and he's teaching Larry's class. In the lower right is Joanna Smith taking students through an exhibition she worked on with us of works from ancient Cyprus. It was called City of Gold, and the exhibition was the culmination of a decades-long, about 30-year excavations that Princeton did on the island of Cyprus. So this was a culminating exhibition at the end of that project. So this is really what our core mission is. So we've always focused on teaching students in the galleries, and we've always focused on the faculty and students as a core part of what we do. In terms of technology, that's meant various things. A few years ago, Janet and I worked with our curator of Asian art and Princeton's Education Technology Center. We had a grant from the Freeman Foundation to create this website organized around our Asian art collection. Janet and I have worked together for about 12 years. We've always worked very closely together because, of course, information and form and content are so closely allied. So this was a project that was quite useful to scholars. We got emails from scholars around the world thanking us for the deep information that's available here about our collections, but also about Chinese history and how it relates to our collections. But it also functions very well for other visitors. K-12 teachers use it a lot for their class visits, and there are also sort of fun interactive elements like this interactive created by Second Story, which shows you how you make an ancient bronze vessel. This was a nice interaction as well with Princeton faculty because the world expert on ancient Chinese bronzes, Robert Bagley, teaches at Princeton. And so I can promise you that this is absolutely accurate because every time we'd send Bob a storyboard, he'd say, no, you can't say that, no, you can't say that. So it's absolutely accurate. And Janet and I just finished this project, well, we're still updating a little bit, which is a mobile-friendly tour of an exhibition that's traveling the world right now, Cezanne in the Modern. We work with our curators and faculty and students to create this mobile tour, both in French and English, because the show is traveling to Aix-en-Provence and also Vancouver. So we do a lot of various technology projects. But now to the strategic plan and these sort of smaller tweaks that I'm talking about today. So we embarked upon an intensive strategic planning process last summer, a year ago last summer. And like most strategic planning processes, we wanted to engage as many of our stakeholders as possible. So we identified and reviewed peer organizations, but also interviewed people from peer organizations. We did quantitative and qualitative analysis of our various ephemera, but also our publications. And we surveyed over 800 stakeholders. We did 5 focus groups, and we did over 200 one-on-one interviews. At the end of the process, over 1,600 stakeholders were engaged. And one of the key stakeholders we wanted to talk to, of course, were our faculty and students. And the faculty, one thing came through loud and clear from the faculty. We heard it over and over again in online surveys with faculty who use the collection and don't, in interviews, and from the faculty members who were on the strategic planning committee. They want access to our collections online. So here are just 3 quotes from the surveys. Improve the access to a comprehensive web-accessible database, which would include a repertory of the works in storage. Let us know exactly what collections are there. We want a better online database of museum holdings. Max Anderson talked last night about, how do you get your director to pay attention? If you get your key stakeholders to say over and over and over again, this is what we want, this is a good way to get your administrator to pay attention. So how some of these things came through in our strategic plan, which has several key points, I'm just going to focus on a couple, is first, we'll position students front and center. We'll continue to strengthen our collaborations with individual faculty, departments, arts and humanities groups, and others on and off campus, including moving beyond our traditional partners. We'll enhance the student experience in the classroom through structured learning outside the classroom and through socially oriented experiences. And critically, the museum will provide universal digital access to the collections as quickly as possible, including developing strategies for securing funds for and investing significantly in more content-rich online presentations of the collections. So Janet and her group have the Herculean task of making those things available online, but I'm going to talk about a smaller initiative that we took on. So faculty actually use our collections a lot in teaching. This is a chart and also 5 years worth of data about this. Last academic year, we had 79 courses visit for a total of 195 individual class visits. You'll see it says precepts up there, I think. Precepts is the Princeton word for class visits. We had 3,538 students walk through the door as part of a class. But since many classes come multiple times, that really turns into, in real terms, that's 1,326 unique student visits. which, given the total number of students at Princeton, both undergraduate and graduate, which is about 8,000 students, translate to about 17% of the student population. So it's a significant percentage. And by the way, I'm able to access that data thanks to a purpose-built system that we worked on with Janet's team. It's an online scheduling system that also allows us to pull statistical data, which has been a great help to us in our work. So we've had a lot of faculty visits. It's always been a core part of our mission, but we weren't always organizing our work around that need. That we didn't necessarily organize our days in a way that reflected that this was our mission critical piece, that this is why we were founded, for Princeton student visits. We would also often find ourselves scrambling at the last minute to pull things together for a course visit. We always made it. We always got all the works out on view. We always made it possible for the faculty and students to come, but it could be a very messy process at times. So this was a really key thing for us that came out of the strategic plan, was that we reinforced the idea that this is the mission critical piece. So what we did was, as rather like what Bill was just talking about, was to meet as a team. So Janet and her team and I, our chief registrar, our associate registrar, our associate director for exhibitions and collections, as well as our manager of exhibition services, we all came together to ask the question, how are we going to shift our resources to privilege the precepts? So we streamlined our processes, and we were able to shift some resources. I had some money in an endowment fund that we were able to use to help hire someone whose job it will be for about half of the year to help organize precept visits. We didn't go for new funding. We didn't have that possibility, but we were able to repurpose funds that we had. And I had an opening in my department that we also reshaped the position so that it focused more on precepts. So now we have the very small tech tweak that I'm talking about. This is David Ball. He's in the English department at Princeton, and he's working on a course. We're lucky enough to have a Mellon grant that allows us to give funds to faculty who want to develop courses that are taught pretty much exclusively in the museum and use the collection as a core part of their teaching. And David submitted a proposal for that grant about mapping modernist New York art and literature. So the idea of the course is that through the semester, the students are going to work on mapping online the history of the avant-garde in New York from 1880 to 1930. And they'll start in Harlem, they'll start in the South, and they'll work up to, they'll start in the Village, and then they'll work up to Harlem in the North. So that's the purpose of the course, and they'll be asking key questions like, how was modernity defined and understood differently by writers, artists, and other cultural figures in New York? And how did artists respond to the city in literature, painting, and photography, music, and film? Now, speaking of TMS, we've long used TMS as part of organizing class visits. We create object packages that are used by our registrars and preparators to figure out which works are going to be brought out for the course into our study rooms. So this summer, David and I and our curator of photography and curators of Princeton drawings combed the collection for works that would serve his course's needs. And so at the end of the summer, we had a 15-page TMS package that gives him all the objects and an image of all the objects he wants to work with. We'll end up reorganizing this package by date so that the registrars and preps will be able to easily access the objects from storage and make them available when they're needed. But this is the tweak. Instead of just letting these continue to live in TMS or on my computer and various other curators' computers, we're going to make these available online. And so that means that next year, when I have a faculty member who's interested in doing a class on New York, I can just send them to the web to find this class by David that they can use as the beginning of a resource for their class. Now, this seems like a small thing, but when you multiply that by 79 different courses that visit the museum every year, suddenly we have a very rich and robust resource for our faculty. And it can also serve as an inspiration to faculty who can't quite think through how they might use the museum in their teaching, but by looking at what another faculty member has done, they'll be able to be inspired, hopefully, by what they find online. Now, this isn't particularly sexy to look at, but it's also what faculty want. They're not looking for bells and whistles and interactives. They're really just interested in what is the content that you have that relates to my teaching. So, we thought big through the strategic plan, but we're starting small with these object packages online, but what this is going to create is a robust online resource for faculty. So, thank you so much.
Again, I'm Janet Strohl-Morgan. I'm the Associate Director for Information and Technology at the Princeton University Art Museum. And Caroline and I work well together, and we have been working for 12 years, and it's great that she's attending MCN this year with us. In line with MCN's theme this year, the Princeton University Art Museum did think big, and we did complete an extensive strategic planning process which identified our top objectives for the next 5 years. One of the most clearly stated priorities is to provide full and complete universal access to our collection, which is over 92,000 works of art. Caroline focused on our audiences, including our faculty and students, our #1 priority. I will focus on the steps we are taking and the investment we are making for virtual access to become a reality. How do we tackle the overwhelming concept and Herculean task of publishing our entire collection online as quickly as possible when we began with less than 10%? We start small. For years, we have been taking small, cobbled-together steps to inch along. There's always been a desire to have everything online globally, but the funding to make this happen in a holistic and complete way has been slow to materialize and comes in dribs and drabs. Do you remember life before databases such as TMS? Let me take you back. In the 1990s, we had a Microsoft Access database that tracked basic information, did not include images, and not all objects were recorded. I have to think about that for a minute. Not all objects were recorded, so our entire collection wasn't even in the database. Scholars or visitors had to ask for permission to come and physically access the written card catalog by appointment. The registrars were the only staff allowed to update the database, and curators only had read access. By 2000, we lagged behind our colleagues in the museum world. We also knew online access without digital images would be less than ideal. Did anybody go to the Ignite talks? I'm just going to sidetrack a minute. Max Anderson said, don't use the word digital. Well, when you use it too many times, you can't actually say it anymore. So I think he's right. We should stop using that word. In trying to break into the online world, we launched our first generation website in 2002, Web 1.0, if you will. The site contained static information about the museum, how to visit, and what to attend. There are a few images of our collection highlights on the site. In 2003, we received an IMLS Learning Opportunities Grant and hired Jeff Evans, our manager of visual resources and photography, to manage a project to digitize about 7,200 existing film resources. In 2005, we hired Catherine Goodwin, our manager of collections information, to implement and manage TMS. We then established the Collections Information and Access Initiative. We use the word initiative because a project signifies a beginning and an end, and we had to get out of the mindset that it's an ending project. This is ongoing. This is something that doesn't end. It's a living, breathing project or initiative. Later that year, we launched a project to inventory our full collection and produce digital images of every object in our care. In 2006, in response to the Rapid Imaging Project, we purchased Portfolio to manage our digital assets. In 2007, as a condition of the IMLS grant, we published approximately 5,000 works of art with images and basic information on our reconceptualized website, Web 2.0, if you will. Dynamic collections information and images were available to the global public for the very first time in 2007. However, we still lagged behind our colleagues in the digital realm, and we had less than 10% online, and over 90% were still hidden to the Princeton faculty, students, our highest priority, and the public. The attitude at the time was, don't put anything online until we have an image and the curator vets it. With over 92,000 works, this would take years and years and years. Things were beginning to change. In 2009, we had our first breakthrough. Our director was new and supportive of the online environment. Other museums had already published their entire collections for the world to see. Attitudes began to shift, the desire to share the collective knowledge of scholarly research about our collections. We entered the world of social media and integrated it into our online presence. We were beginning to connect with our audiences and build an online community. We were building awareness and excitement for our exhibitions, educational programs, and events. We were also providing additional access points to our collections. However, we still had less than 10% online. In 2010, we participated in the Mellon-funded Museum Data Exchange Program, which developed tools to extract standardized CWA-lite records for harvesting data. In 2012, we had our second breakthrough. We followed institutions such as the Getty and the Met and the Rijksmuseum, and we adopted an open access to public domain images policy. We now provide, without cost, access to high-quality digital images of works in the public domain for scholarly publishing, research, and teaching. That same year, we began to participate in aggregators, including ArtStore, ArtResource, and the Google Art Project. In 2012, we overhauled our website. We designed a Drupal-based site with the capacity to deliver dynamic content, again, with less than 10% of the collection online. You must be seeing a pattern by now. This year, we began to participate in Artsy and a Mellon-funded planning grant managed by the Smithsonian on linked open data. Our last and much-needed breakthrough came in the form of the strategic objective which this talk is based on. With over 1,600 museum constituents agreeing online access is a top priority, we now had backing and support to move full steam ahead. It not only made providing digital access a priority, it's getting the attention of university administration, and we're beginning to gain support and momentum. What happened next? We analyzed the state of our data and planned a phased approach. Last spring, we met with curators to determine what needed to happen to prepare our object records for online delivery. The talent behind this project, my team, which is shown here, and I appreciate very, very much, made this happen. They worked feverishly throughout the summer, cleaning up data and making sure every record had basic information to be searchable. Photography continued, and we were enhancing functionality on our website. In September of this year, we met our first phase goal of providing online digital access to all accessioned objects in the museum's care. We published almost 45,000 works of art, most with images, to our website. We finally broke the pattern and now have much more than 10% of our collection online. We faced several challenges in our first phase. Our first challenge was the fact that we were publishing data without complete curatorial approved information. Curators were concerned that there's an assumption that once the data is online, it's taken as fact. Knowing that art history is not a static field and that it would take years and years to fully vet every object, they realized the benefits far outweigh the concerns. So now we were seeing a change in the mindset, a change in the tide, and everybody was starting to support the same goal. To help alleviate their concerns, we post a message on our main collections page describing the changing nature of our records, and we also indicate which objects are curator approved. Our second challenge is a good challenge. There was a concern that once the information is accessible, the desire to see the object in person would dramatically increase, and it would be difficult to keep up with the increased amount of visits. We will cross this bridge when we come to it, and we are really hoping we come to it. Our third challenge, which we are still facing, is the funding of our next, more in-depth phase. We have written a major internal proposal and are hopeful that with the interest and attention from university administration, we will be successful. But until then, we continue to take small steps. We are already realizing the benefits of providing access to our collections. The museum's authoritative images are published. As you can see here, our images are online, whether or not we've put them there. And if we want them to look the way they're supposed to look, we have to get ours out there. Our curators are receiving positive feedback. Brian Just, our curator of the Art of the Ancient Americas, has had 2 good examples. A scholar at the California College of the Arts was writing a paper on the symbol of a cross and found a textile through our website that will now enhance his paper's argument. Another example was a scholar at Yale who knew that there was a sacrificial knife with specific markings existing somewhere in the entire world. Through Google Images, he was able to find it resided in our collection. But before September, none of this would have been possible. Before September, we had 9,000 images out of 92,000 online. In 2 months, we've doubled our online visitors, increased traffic to our collections pages, and we've tripled the amount of images being downloaded. Communication is key. We work closely with Caroline's educational staff and our curators. We collaborate on what the pages should look like and how they should function. At all costs, obtain buy-in. Listen to concerns and work with your colleagues. Make sure you're on the same page about what's being published online. Use your metrics and let everyone know how this is beneficial by sharing the increase in access. This is an area that we're looking at a little bit more closely that we really haven't gotten into enough yet. We've been having the same conversation for years. How do we operationalize the digital? Why is this still an uphill battle? How do we, as museum professionals, act as change agents and enable the transformation to full and complete digital access? It doesn't happen overnight. We were struggling and behind the curve. The strategic plan enabled the big thinking in envisioning all art and its available scholarship published online. We have support and we're continuing in small steps, but we're not there yet. Our next larger phase depends on additional funding. It's a shift in the way we think and do things so that the digital is at the table from the very beginning. Every staff member needs to be a digital advocate, not just my information and technology team. What's next, you may ask? We are working on a sustainable methodology to publish full data with every single work of art to create an environment filled with rich content with additional fields such as bibliography, exhibition history, and geography. We're developing tools for faculty and students to use for teaching from and research of our collections. We're working on additional subject cataloging to further enhance researching. We're adding all didactic materials, including label copy and catalog entries. We're working on better search mechanisms and crowdsourcing so you can actually find what you're looking for. We're looking closer at our metrics to help inform our decisions, and we're also starting to look into data visualization to map out what's happening with our data. We're also working on improving the visitor experience by providing more access points to our collections, one of which Caroline talked about. We're looking at better searching with the ability to use a browse by artist maker. That should be going live this week. We're also working on allowing 2 downloadable images at different sizes. So if you don't need a publication quality image, you don't have to download that size. And we're working on a build your own galleries functionality that will be really good for our students and faculty as well as our public. Until more funding is available, we continue to take small steps. We were just awarded an IMLS grant that will allow us to publish over 5,000 images of minor weight photographs. We own the copyright to another, and it's another chunk of the 92,000 that will be online. So that's another 5,000 images going out. We were also awarded an internal university grant to work collaboratively with several departments to create an online resource for materials collected in the 1930s from an excavation in Antioch, which is an ancient Greek city. The project will allow us to share scholarship in the field, and as funding is secured, it will eventually house all of our materials from the excavation. None of this is online now. Nobody can see anything. We have an access database that scholars have to come to Princeton in order to see where they record their information, and now it'll make an environment that will allow for sharing. We may not be at the forefront of cutting-edge technologies, but online digital access is changing the way we view, learn, understand, think about, discuss, and interact with art. Visitors expect to be a part of the conversation, and they want access to everything, and they want it now. As museum professionals, we are stewards of our collections, both physically and virtually. We are working hard to follow what other museums have already accomplished. In my museum, we are leading the digital transformation by raising awareness and funds, and spreading digital advocacy throughout our museum and our university. It's a big task, but we are doing it. And as collectively, as museums, when we come to MCN, it's the way we can talk to each other and learn what Bill's doing, what Mike's doing, and how do we help that happen. And I think a big thing is making it be the priority in your museum so that the museum administration also is an advocate for you. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Mike Butman from the Henry Ford. I'm CIO there, and while they're getting the technology ready here, I'll just try to give an intro. Oh, this stuff always happens to me. That's what we were talking about beforehand. Anyways, what I'm going to share with you this morning is kind of just some more at the gut level, some human dynamics, some aha moments that I had this year, some light bulb moments, and I'm going to share some stories with you about how do you meet this gap between the digital demand and how fast things are moving with perhaps legacy thinking at times. And as I'm talking, keep in mind maybe that what I'm talking about doesn't just apply to like pure IT situations. I had this conversation with my brother the other day. He's in the biotech industry, creating new products like bioengineered hearing and all kinds of things. And as I'm talking to him about IT, and the things I'm going to talk about today, he says, oh my gosh, that is the exact same thing we deal with at work when development is trying to innovate at lightning speed and we're trying to produce these genetic materials that are going to help people. So anyways, let's get to it. Just a bit about us. A lot of people don't know what the Henry Ford is, so just take a look at this slide. We're a big place, multi-venue. We're in Dearborn, Michigan. Henry Ford, 1929, really set to collect the American experience and bring it home. So as an example, Noah Webster's house is not in New England anymore. It is actually in Greenfield Village on our property. We have 80 buildings, several hundred acres, multi-venue. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm just going to do a quick review of kind of last year's talk because I think there's some salient points that kind of dovetail on some things that Bill was talking about as well. So this last year was really the last year of our strategic plan that was set forth in about 2009. It's about 4 or 5 years we've been working on this. So this is kind of a reflection on those aha moments as we were finishing up the plan and some things that came to light. So one of the things I talked about last year, and I just highlighted the blue stuff that I think is really pertinent to today's discussion. It's really about IT getting out there, technology getting out there, much like Bill said, working with people collaboratively. But it's about showing value, what you bring to the table, because what I'm finding more than ever today with the digital demands is if you can't come with the value, the clients, the partners, whatever you want to call them, the departments, they will seek the answers on their own. It's a whole new paradigm today. And everybody owns the technology. And I'm finding that out of these different forces that we're having to deal with now in technology, cloud and mobility are driving it, in my opinion, faster than anything. And when I mean cloud, I don't mean websites. And when I mean mobility, I don't mean an app. I mean pervasiveness of mobility. I'm talking about we use our phones for everything. We sign up for benefits. We look at analytics, BI. We are using mobile devices. They're being pervasive in our lives. And then cloud, it's not just webs. Arguably, in 10 years, maybe the whole IT infrastructure will be moved up in the cloud. The CEO of Microsoft, I was at a conference last month, and he said, even Microsoft itself, what we treasure inside of our infrastructures will be in the cloud, and that was coming from him. And that about freaked everybody out in the room there. Wait a minute, what about our jobs? Well, adapting to cloud. That's what it's about. Obviously, aligning, and I mean business, I don't mean treating your institutions like a business, but aligning with the needs of the organization. I guess you could substitute the word organization there. But alignment isn't enough itself. It's, again, demonstrating that business value. And I think the bottom line here for me, this is like my mantra last year, is in this chaotic, changing, fast-moving world, it's our responsibility to help lead out of that chaos clarity to the organization and help them out. Also, team. Last year, my focus was on shifting from a service to solutions mentality. And today, I'm going to take that to another level. And I want to introduce this concept, and I've been working a lot with the Gartner organization, and they introduced this concept called bimodal IT. And it really kind of rattled a lot of the CIOs around the world, and some didn't agree. But when you start to dig into this thing, it really starts to make sense, and it can be very helpful with trying to inspire a culture of innovation in the organization. And when we talk about digitizing, a lot of times we're talking about digitizing the collection and web. What I want to talk about today or consider is digitalizing the whole enterprise or the whole business, the whole thing, top to bottom. So let's take a look at what this might look like in terms of digitizing the whole thing. So imagine two poles here. On the right-hand side is digital demand. Look at the forces. The changes are just coming at us fast and furious. And people are starting to shadow us, and technologists are popping up all over the place, which isn't a bad thing. But what it's tending to do is these forces are kind of pushing that digital demand is going this way, when a lot of times in IT what we're doing is saying, wait a minute, what about infrastructure? What about governance? What about security? All these things that frankly don't mean a lot to people who are pushing the business demand. So what we end up with is these forces for technologists are, in my opinion, can get very polarized. So the question that I was really posing to myself this year is, what about the gap in between? What do we do in between to shore it up? So let me show this business demand. This slide will give you a picture of what it meant for us. So we started the year in 2014. We're going to finish up the strategic plan, flip the whole thing. You know, we were 2003 Microsoft legacy architecture, flip everything. Microsoft Office 365, get rid of XP, move to Windows 7. We didn't move to Windows 8. Wasn't ready for that. But we think maybe Windows 10 next year, maybe. And then we flipped the whole the phone system. And we have about 900 nodes, so we're a fairly large enterprise, so that was not any small undertaking. On top of that, a huge CRM digital marketing project working with marketing. And just to throw in, let's flip the whole legacy human capital management system, which is going to affect all 1,400 employees and 600 volunteers. So that was our perspective. Remember the polls? So here we are on the left saying this is what we're doing. Now let's take a look at what the business decided to do. Well, first of all, two major software vendors, Emu and Seriousware, decided to sell themselves. Wait a minute. We just put the whole collection in Emu. What does that mean? What is it? Are they going to be around in 2 years, 3 years? And so we had to deal with that. And I believe both companies are viable and they are going to be around. But we still had to deal with that this year on top of what we were doing. The organization decided to broadcast a weekly show. You can catch us on CBS anywhere in the country between 8 and 9 o'clock, between 8 and 9. It's Innovation Nation. It's really cool. It's not just about us. It's going all over the world, finding people who are doing innovative, very innovative things. Not just drones, but really cool things in third world nations, just all over the place. But anyways, so on top of everything, we're now producing a 52-week show, okay? IT kind of split, and now I have a digital director peer, so on top of getting all my stuff done, I'm trying to navigate with my new colleague, how do we divvy up things and how do we work together? President decided, we got a large campus, I want an emergency notification system, like right now. Okay, well, we're flipping a telephone system, so we had to deal with that. And I could just keep going down the line. And the right-hand side, I mean, you could insert your own kind of stresses and surprises that come at you. Oh, yeah, Ford. So they're producing the F-150 truck, aluminum truck, never been done. And we host the tour on the Ford property to actually see the truck being done. So our whole show, we have these theaters, multimedia and everything, they got totally flipped in the midst of this. And we didn't know this was coming until about 7 months ago. So back to these polls. So the question that I've been really asking myself, going back to this, and now I'm doing IT and digital expectation, but look on the left and look on the right, and you might see some familiar words there. The pushing of innovation, and we're kind of holding on to our stuff on the left. The question is, how do we close up the gap? So I've been really trying to lead my team to focus on the organizational need and not our own inside IT needs, and trying to get them to lead not with operations. So my aha moment, okay, this is kind of weird, but it was an aha moment for me. So I went to this leadership conference, and they made us do those 360s, and we got this thing back called the Change Style Indicator, and I scored an 8. And it meant that I was, but you could go 66 on the other end or 16. What this means is conservers are, well, we'll get to that in a minute, because I'm looking at this thing trying to figure it out. I'm like, okay, I'm a pragmatist. That's okay. It means I'm in the middle. Until they took us in this room. And I used the horseshoe. They put us in a horseshoe, but I thought, I'm Dallas and, down here stuff, so I put that up there. Okay, so conservers on the left, pragmatists on the bottom in the U, and originators on the right. Now watch what happened. And you could apply this to biotech. You could apply it to the curatorial process, anything. Watch this. Originators on the right. Full of opportunity and vision, and man, they started modeling. We could open up this business and we could sell cupcakes in downtown, blah, blah, blah. And what's happening on the left? Wait a minute. You can't start until you have a plan. You can't be successful unless you have a big plan. We got to have infrastructure. I'm not kidding you. This was a model. This was fun. Within about 5 minutes, the two sides are arguing. And us pragmatists on the bottom are like watching this whole thing and trying to help. But here's the aha moment. This is the dialogue with inside the organization that happens all the time. And I went, oh my gosh, this is my IT ops folks over here. And this is just as an example, not picking on any department, and here's marketing pushing vision over here. And this is the way the dialogue continues. So what's at the center of the dialogue? Wow. Talk about, capacity for failure, a definition of what failure means in innovation, completely different perspectives on either side of the room. What does success look like? Completely different ideas of success. The ability to change, wow. The people on the left, hey, wait a minute. We don't want to change and rock the boat. We want to keep things stable, reliable, and all those kind of things. And then timeliness, obviously. So this is where kind of Gartner comes in. They did a major publication this year, and they defined this phenomenon in IT as mode 1, mode 2. Real simple. I'm a simpleton. I'm not into these big, theoretical things and big words and everything. Mode 1 and 2 was just fine for me. This is what it really looks like in the Gartner model. Really familiar, so breaking down all those aspects of technology down the center. Mode 1 thinkers do it like that. Mode 2 thinkers do it like that. So I've taken it from an organizational view now down to the IT. Now look on the left and the right. The one on the left is more like a marathon runner, whereas the one on the right is a sprinter. Question, which is better? Mode 1 or mode 2? Anybody? You need both. You absolutely need both. Now, the demands of mode 1, even in their architecture and their foundation, they're being challenged with cloud and things like that. But yeah, and it really depends on the race you're running. Okay? I agree with that. You absolutely need both. So in IT and technology, we really have a foot in both camps. So I was able to engage with Gartner in a 3-day kind of global blitz where we did this conversation. And one of the things that I submitted on this thing was, what I said before, down at the bottom. We need to lead with insight, solution, and help. And then after that, maybe governance and expertise and controls and those kind of things. But don't lead with that. lead with the solutions and the ideas and the innovation, and the other comes. And then I posted another article, and Gartner dared me to do it, and I said, okay, I'm exposing myself. Virtually. So the backlash of being innovative. What if what you're trying to do doesn't have organizational support, peer support, or even your boss's support, but you know it's good for the organization, and you're not getting any pats on the back for it. In fact, you're meeting with conflict and resistance left and right. What do you do with that? Where do you get your inspiration? So I wrote another article. And this, I think, can apply to a lot of us looking for inspiration. We can find our inspiration for innovation and creative thinking where? In our roots. It's our artists, our artisans, our innovators. For me, it was Thomas Edison. Look at that room. That looks like just a Mode 1 architectural, manufacturing room. Aha, but quite the contrary. This is where he did all his magic with his artisans and his craftsmen and created a light bulb and 1,000 other things. So I actually took the museum's inspiration of its ghosts and infused it into this business conversation about Mode 1 and Mode 2. So how might Mode 1 and Mode 2 literally look like? Take the Microsoft transformation I was talking about in my 2014 strategic plan. I'm not going to read these. Look at the left and look at the right. Look familiar? A year ago, when I was presenting, we were embarking on this, and I thought we were 50% complete. And what I learned when I brought in a project manager, we were 7% complete on the transformation to get us ready for 2014. We had to shore that gap up real quick. And we did. SharePoint. Left and right. Finance needs it, everybody needs it, they want to use it, but we're saying we don't have the skills and you got to have 2 people full-time to support it, and there's servers and there's Active Directory and group policy. Make your head spin. Again, you need both because you don't want it to be chaotic, but you got to move and do something. So back to here. So first tip, this is what I do with my staff, and it's so simple, and it was revealed to me through this digital demand thing that Gartner did. Real simple. There's the polls. This is true. Marketing wanted to do this customer journey thing January 2015. Some of my folks said, yeah, but there's 36 web touch points. This is impossible. This is going to take 4 months. So I pushed the issue, closing up the gap, and this is what we came up with. We don't need 36 touch points. We can have one template and have the 36 touch points, just send a variable and do the whole thing. We eliminated, and it turned into literally like a 2-day assignment versus a 4-month assignment. So here's another example. I call it leading in the moment of innovation. The big phone system, switch over, 900 phones. We had 300 to go, analog phones. We have about 200 acres of property, multiple venues. The old paradigm in Mode 1 said it took 30 minutes per phone to move. Do the math. 30 minutes per phone, 300 phones, and they told me we're averaging about 5 a week on top of all the other things we got to do. Do the math in your head. When are we going to flip out the old phone system? Well over a year, I think. I used to be a math expert. I don't know if I still am. A very long time. So here's where leading in the moment of innovation, I called it. So here's an example of the guy doing the old thing with the toners and walking all through the closets and toning the wires out, 30 minutes per phone. So we were arguing about this one day, back and forth, and we were trying to do verbal innovation. And I said, you guys, come on, we could do this. And I took the whole team, we went into the computer room, and there's all those wires that they said, there's all these wires, and you got to do it this way. And all of a sudden, there's the wires. Magic happened. One of my staff said, we opened up this thing. We opened up this box, and there's this thing in there, and there's this tool. We never knew what it was for. When we redid our village, it's been sitting here. He plugged it in, and all of a sudden, okay, watch this. 30 minutes per phone, a year to move these phones. This guy was able to, with this little innovation trick, because we took it into the moment, took him 2 days to trace all the phones. From 1 year to 2 days. Just because I took the team, that's the leadership thing, took the team into the situation to fix the problem. And here's the last one. Face to face. So many times, I don't know if you can relate to this, you're out there in your organizations, in the enterprise, having these conversations. And you come back to the technology folks, and the mode 1 stuff starts coming up. We can't. Here's an example, my boss's desk. I sent my network team in there. Here's all the screens, television producing, script writing, talking to Dan Gurney and Edsel Ford. He's got his touchscreen laptop down there, which we can't connect to the network, by the way, up till now, because it's Windows 8. By the time the network manager, by me putting him in the face of the people that were creating the digital demand and having the conversation, within 2 days he figured it out. We're completely changing his setup. And here's the kicker. The vice president said in the end, now I can see a whole new way of doing this work that's been so laborious. I'm going to change my workflow to utilize these new tools in a much smarter way. And that's the third one, the face-to-face. So the three, the gap thing, innovating in the moment, taking us there sometimes where the problem is happening rather than just talking about it, and then putting people who maybe be mode 1 thinking in the face of innovation in the mode 2 issues. And that worked for us. So that's it for me.
So now we have some time to do a question and answer period. So if anybody has any questions, just throw it out there. Go ahead.
Hi. So my question is actually maybe be simply short. I'm the director of IT for the Seattle Art Museum, and one of the just literally finished a 3-year plan. And the challenge we're having is, wow. So simply, we have a culture that's been there for a very long time, and there needs to be huge cultural changes, shifts, migrations, I don't even know how. And we are struggling immensely. So one of the things we tried doing was when we do like digital team task force, and it's literally become a version of it. So I'm just kind of curious, feedback from people, have you done this? What are some of the cultural challenges you're into? What are some of your solutions? How did you get people out of their silence? People are so protective. They won't stop. They won't stop. And you try to get in there and they just lock on the doors and they shut it down. So it's like, how do you get them out of that? How do you,
I think a lot of us have experienced that challenge, and I think Mike's like ready to answer. So.
Well, just a thought. I struggle with this for years. And you know what? I flipped my entire office. My whole office has become like an innovation zone. And at first it was hard getting people to come there, but what they realized is when they did come there for the meetings, or the teleconference, the video conference, I had all the bells and the whistles and everything, all the tools at their disposal. They found that to be a real asset. So now people like schedule my office like crazy. People are in there all the time, and we're all collaborating, and I bring other people into the meeting. So it's not just me, but I literally flip the space. And when I talked about this when I went to Gartner last month, other people do this too. Maybe you create an innovation zone somewhere, load it with the stuff, load it with the examples, the stuff to play with, and people will be drawn to it rather than trying to like more deliberately create teams, like you said, that are really hard to get off the ground. So it's a thought.
I'm having to talk to you both offline a little bit about it. There's a whole science to innovation and the obstacles to it. And so this sort of social internal set of obstacles have been well taxonomized. A lot of it has to do with identifying who your champions are, but identifying the social structure. And I can refer you to materials that Vanderbilt and a book on this that really diagrams it
let them take the credit
And
for
then
the work.
always let them
Yeah.
take the credit. It's always their credit.
Yeah, and that's one of the key pieces of that. So we've had a variety of different advisory committees, and really that piece about it, letting other people take the credit. So even in where we do a board level committee and we do these presentations, and the less IT staff talks, and the less it's us talking about what we're doing, and the more that you can get other departments talking about what they've done. So we have, conservation will stand up and say that they produced a video. Well, they didn't, but that's fine. And so, but letting people feel, there's a question of ownerships. And I think the problem with those committees is that people have this problem that Mike's talking about, that, they come to us and they feel that we're kind of roadblocks. I talk about it, you're the rock in the stream. And they kind of just sort of try to figure out ways to go around you. And the only way to engage people is to give them the ability to think about what they're doing and how you can help them, and even take their ideas and sort of reactualize them. But otherwise, those committees are just all about, why don't you do what I see other people doing?
I think ownership is a big word in that, because in our museum, I think the best way we get around that is by communicating, bringing everybody at the table at the same time. Because if we're not at the table in the beginning, it's an afterthought, and we don't want to be the afterthought. And to what Bill was saying, the ownership of letting them own what they're doing, even though you're providing the tools to make it happen.
And I would add, though, that I think it's so important that not everybody's going to be a champion out of the box. But if it's not you telling them it's valuable, but if it's people they respect and care about telling them, like having the faculty say, this is what we need. I mean, I think it's fair we had a curator on the strategic planning committee who probably didn't care one way or the other about digital access, but he came out of that process like being one of our greatest champions.
Yeah, now he's a really big champion.
I would also say external voices are extremely important. Mediation, and a lot of times we have ingrained culture. Nobody's listening to each other, so bringing in an outside voice to talk it out and to mediate that conversation is extraordinarily helpful. Especially if you can get somebody, especially in Seattle, I know that there's a ton of resources for technology, right? To get somebody to come in and just do some presentations to the staff, having somebody else speak to you with authority is extremely beneficial for people that kind of aren't willing to listen to that in the first place.
Hi, I've got two members. The first one is, could Bill just repeat his talk, because I got it too late.
Well, it goes online.
And this is really interesting. I forget you do later, Bill, or something. But as another perspective, because I don't run the IT department in the museum, I'm often working with some of the people who are possibly thinking that you're the rock in the street. So let me ask a different question. How do we, my colleagues, people I'm working with, who want to do something exciting, what's the best way to approach the IT department to make sure that you have your the ability to contribute, but also so that you're welcome it, as opposed to another headache?
So back to that horseshoe thing I showed. I mean, that to me was the aha moment to exactly what you're talking about, because I realized when people would bring the conversation to us, we met it immediately with the governance and the rock. We did it. So I changed the game. We wouldn't stack the deck with a whole room full of people that were going to do that. We listened, or we talked about it beforehand. And then I did the gap thing, which was, no, always putting both perspectives up there. This is what we're trying to do. These are your concerns. How do we work together to do it, rather than what IT tends to do, which is just lead with their demands and structure and rigor and process and all that, which drives everybody crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, in our institution, our director is compelling. So the part of my talk that you missed is cross-departmental committees, and then the ownership, the governance of those committees is always shared. So traditional committees that would be run by my department, or traditional committees that would be run by a curatorial department, have paired chairs. So there's a member of interactive technology going along with the curator for an interpretive committee. I share my committee on collections information with the head of the library. And so it starts with that. So So kind of take, and it's hard, what I talked about at the end of mine is it's difficult. So, you have to sort of talk to yourself. It's like people aren't telling you, because it's about respect, it's about ownership. People aren't telling you they don't like what you do. People aren't telling you that you're not doing a good job, but people are explaining to you that in order to actually get your work done, you're going to need to cooperate with people. And so we're being, in many ways, forced in that mindset to collaborate. But I think people respond to that better because they don't see us. So we're not going into a curator's meeting with a monolithic curator standing in front and saying this, and they're not coming into our meetings and with us standing monolithic and saying that. So there's a sense that the responsibility is shared, that the distribution of the decision making is shared from the beginning, which is done that, and the cry that everybody's going to have, which I'll say because it's just talk to us early. The thing that annoys everybody, and it comes from both ends. Nobody wants to hear about something that's going to happen tomorrow.
I think in the end, if you don't have the small wins, everything we're saying is just talk.
Yeah.
And
start small. Find
yeah.
something really.
Yeah.
Find something really small. Get something like we did with around some certain things that just hey, we all figured out we can actually do that. We can change we have enough people in the room to change these rules right now. So we'll change them when we'll go, and that kind of gave everybody a little bit of momentum to start to attack the bigger things. Yeah.
And starting small and having those small successes are really important. I mean, the little bits that we get online, every time we put more online, people get more excited about it. So the point of we finally have half our collection online. And I think getting there was really tough. Getting to the table, having everybody talk and being on the same page was difficult. But now it seems that we are, and now we're still looking for more funding. Because the arts are always looking for funding. Anybody else?
I actually have a slightly different experience than I think some of the folks in the audience, and I thought I'd put this out there. I work for a small organization that has actually a great IT department. They're not the people, they're not the ones sitting kind of in the river making things along. They're great at coming with ideas when approached by someone. So there's truly support department. And I actually, I think kind of an analog to Mike, you said the digital director is someone coming up with ideas that impact IT and that have IT implications. I'll go to them and say, oh, I have this idea. And they're like, great, go for it. But I want there to be more of a partnership there. And I was just curious to know, what your experience has been bridging that gap and kind of reverse way, right? Not that to provide barrier, but actually to provide for the innovative feedback that I think that really organizations can benefit from. Like clients are coming from all sides. They're coming from different digital initiatives. So I think a lot of organizations have more than one piece of people that are coming and saying, oh, I have this idea, oh, I have this idea, I have this idea.
have you tried food? I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but I mean, creating kind of a social, that has really worked at our place. And everybody knows in the organization, you want in IT to embrace, it's chocolate. And it's the big joke. And everybody, you come to a meeting and they've got chocolate because they know that there's this connection. So whatever that is, creating that place, so there's a little bit of fun to it. There's some expectation, not just about the thing at hand. So creating that gathering spot. Again, that's what I did in my office, and now everybody's beating my door down to come in to talk about stuff. So,
and for us, I think it's an IT staff development issue, in that people are used to being in the support role, and people are used to having projects brought to them, and it's really just the idea of how do you make the thing that somebody wants to make happen. And I think back to that sort of co-chairing and ownership piece. People have to feel that they can make changes, and that people, the people on the other side, to Mike's sort of pushes in both ends. People on the other side are going to accept the changes. I know a lot of my staff still feels like they're really compelled to do the things that they're asked to do, and they don't really have the ability to say that they want to do these things different. And we haven't really come up with we've come up with some models, but we haven't come up with the best models to give people the comfort to say, I understand what you want to do, and I understand what your goals are. It's back to that idea of being able to talk back to people in their own language. So I understand what you're trying to do, but really, this might be a better way to do. I'm not telling you not to do the thing that you want to do. I'm just trying to find different ways to do it. And a lot of times, coming back from IT, it sounds like you're telling people that what they want to do is wrong. It's like, well, no, you can't do it that way because of governance. You can't do it that way because of this. And what people hear is like, well, you don't like my idea,
Right.
not that you're trying to help them actually actualize their idea, but they're hearing that, well, you don't like my idea, and I don't like your idea, so now we're, that's the end of that. And so really, it's about teaching people how to do. We're often on the technology side really awful communicators, and it's teaching people how to communicate back their ideas and how to sort of come together on still solving the problem.
Anybody else? Thank you all for coming. Join us at our SIG lunch tomorrow.